Coming up, we meet the author behind the book aiming to support young women called Sisterhood. A short film explores the legacy of the Rapid City boarding school. Plus, the Vatican has repudiated the Doctrine of Discovery. We discuss its influence on tribal sovereignty. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
Amadawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. Connections are important in life. Family connections, community connections, and broadband connections. The U.S. Commerce Department last week awarded $25 million to 2 tribes for internet hookups. The funds will go to the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe in Minnesota and the Pueblo of Acoma in New Mexico. It brings the total federal investment in the tribal broadband connectivity program to $1.75 billion. White House officials called it important progress.
Broadband is an investment that has long been asked for from Indian country, and certainly, in this day and age, there's hardly anything you can do without broadband. And these communities haven't seen these types of resources before, especially at that level. So I think it's going to be transformative.
In Virginia, a newly renamed Army base is the first in the continental U.S. to bear the name of a Native American soldier. Last week, the Naming Commission changed Fort Pickett to Fort Barfoot in honor of the late Choctaw Colonel Van Barfoot. The decision is part of an effort to rename military assets that bear the name of Confederate leaders. Barfoot is remembered as a war hero and a World War II Medal of Honor recipient. He first began his 34-year military career by enlisting in the Army in 1940. Barfoot briefly trained at the base when it was Camp Pickett before heading to the war in Europe. His children attended the renaming ceremony, as well as representatives from Virginia-based tribes and the Choctaw Nation, which is where his grandmother was a citizen of. This is the first of 9 Army bases the Pentagon has sent out to rename this year. Cahokia is an art and tech space in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, and it's a gathering place of community. ICT's Ripley Simone Kennebrew went to a recent event. Check it out.
We go out and we heal the youth.
That is the sound of Mike Jordan performing a song about healing Indigenous youth. He was one of 4 Dream Warriors who put on a night of storytelling and music.
Bushuinaway Maganaduck Anin, Jordan Breen, aka Mike Jordan. Today I'm here performing with the rest of the Dream Warriors. We're an Indigenous artist collective who travels Turtle Island, basically spreading our message, telling stories, and just kind of shining a light on our Indigenous youth.
And Jessa Calderon also took the stage.
I have been a working artist for about the last 7 years, but I have been an artist for maybe 15 years. I rap, I sing, and I do poetry. I am also an author, but tonight the #1 story that I am anxious to share, it's a story that talks about a young person who was stripped from their parent forced into the mission system, and it kind of follows the lineages as this person has children and they have children and they have children.
The artists use their work to talk about topics affecting Indigenous communities. That's something Cahokia leaders say the space was created for.
So Cahokia is the first Indigenous women-led, women-owned art and entrepreneur space in downtown Phoenix. We like to consider ourselves a pillar for the community, for the Indigenous art, creative, and entrepreneur community. Having a presence in downtown Phoenix allows us to provide access to the space, to the physical space, if people want to host events like we hosted this evening. But it also gives access to resources and information and opportunities.
In Phoenix, Arizona, Ripley Simone Kennebrew, ICT News.
Well, the nation's largest and longest-running Indian country business event is happening in Nevada next week. The 2023 Reservation Economic Summit is presented by the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. Featuring tribal leaders, members of Congress, and top CEOs, Res 2023 offers unique access to high-caliber networking. The four-day event draws more than 3,000 attendees and hosts over 200 trade show and artisan exhibits. ICT News will be in Las Vegas to bring you the latest. Join us for our team coverage of Res 2023 beginning Monday. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Remembering the Children is a 22-minute documentary that aired this week at the Phoenix Film Festival. It is about the Rapid City boarding school in South Dakota that first opened in 1898. I'm joined now by Emmy-nominated filmmaker and executive director of the project, Jim Warne. Hi, Jim. Welcome to our studio.
Hi. Thank you for the invitation.
I want to jump in here. Tell us the journey of how this film came to be.
It's been a big journey of a lot of volunteers in the community, and it started with the elders that kept the story alive of the children because they weren't identified before. So it's wonderful the elders kept bringing it up at the hospital where it is now, Oyate Health, the new hospital. It's on the grounds of the old boarding school. So it's nice that now those children are being remembered thanks to those elders that never stopped sharing that story so we could make sure that we identify those children.
Speaking of elders, I understand you have a very personal connection to this film. Tell us about who you got to interview.
Yes, it was an honor to interview my mom. She's my star a lot in my documentaries that I make, but her experiences growing up on Pine Ridge and in Indian country, it was, just a good thing to have that personal experience that she can share. And of course, my brother and I were brought up with these realities in terms of these stories that she told, and sharing those stories so that we, as young men, could know that and remember that, and now we're representing that in our older years.
Tell us about the team who worked behind the scenes to make this film come to life.
Well, it was only 4 of us on the film team, which was majority Lakota. So Arlo and Bobby are also Lakota, and Randall was our non-Indian ally with cinematography. But it was a great team to work with, and the film team worked with an elder committee, because we wanted to make sure there was an elder committee ensuring that our storyline was correct. We wanted to make sure the elders were happy with the final product. And my mom was one of those elders as well, so I got to work with her in that capacity. So with that, then all the volunteers, many of those that are interviewed in the film, they uncovered a lot of the documents that identified the children, and then opened up, as mentioned in the film, the Pandora's box of the land issues. 1,200 acres illegally taken by Rapid City, which is now worth $29 million. So that is another issue going on, along with the new Children's Memorial that is being built, and the groundbreaking is just happening, so that's wonderful.
Aside from actually identifying these children, does this film at all look at the egregious things that these children had to face while at this boarding school?
Yes, and we share some of those stories. There's a lot of stories, like my mom had a weekly kerosene head wash at Pine Ridge Boarding School, and then Violet Catches at St. Joseph's went through getting hit till her hands bled for not being able to speak English. So those are some of the stories. We only had 22 minutes. We hope to make a feature-length film, and using this film that's having some good success in the festival market, so that we can get some funding for a feature-length film.
As I just mentioned, this film is being shown at the Phoenix Film Festival. What has been the reaction from folks who have seen it?
Well, it's been awesome. Most of the films have been, screenings have been sold out, and it's been wonderful to have the community to be able to view my work. And the Phoenix Film Festival is extra special because I was born and raised here and went to Tempe High in Arizona State. So it's wonderful to be able to share my work here in the Valley.
I'm really curious, when you're making these kinds of films, and this one in particular, who was this film made for? Was it made for Native people or non-Native people?
Actually both, because we want our Native people to have this for healing. Many people have come up after screenings and are able to share their personal stories. And sometimes it can be very painful and there's tears, but those tears are part of the healing. So our elders that experience that or have family members that experienced it, and I presented it at the conference at our American Indian Disability Summit for my work with the Sonoran Center with Disabilities. Our new Circle for Indigenous Empowerment addresses those issues, and the Phoenix Film Festival now has some of our curriculum, because I use my films for my curriculum and my university work. So it's been extra special here at the Phoenix Film Festival.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you wear many hats. You're a filmmaker, you're in academia. I do want to talk about the Native American Disability Summit.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Oh, it's 19 years in, and it's so wonderful. It was a result of a talking circle. So we just did I do a lot of talking circles and try to indigenize the approach to academia so that we can have our community members, get that buy-in to the process. And this community group here from our talking circle 20 years ago was able to form this summit. Now we're 19 years in just last week, and it's well attended. Many programs, Indian and non-Indian, are there. So it's wonderful to be able to share the work and represent my dad, Jim Sr., who had multiple sclerosis for 37 years. So I always remember as a football player at ASU, my wheelchair section I could point to. So again, it's wonderful to represent him for my work in disabilities and represent Mom for my work in Indian country and advocacy. So it's a good life I'm having representing my parents as best I can.
We have about a minute left, but I do want to know what's next for you and the many projects that you're working on.
Well, now I'm setting up interviews to do the knee, Wounded Knee. It's 50 years since the occupation of Wounded Knee, and I have family buried in that mass grave, so it's very personal for me to represent them in a good way so they're not forgotten either. So it's great to have a platform to be able to share these stories and ability to get opportunities to work with other wonderful filmmakers and hiring young filmmakers in Indian country and seeing them develop. It's really nice to be able to teach through the medium of film.
Well, Jim Warne, thank you so much. This film sounds amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Palamia.
She is a writer who uses her life experiences to shape what she advocates for, like supporting and uplifting strong Native women. Here's this interview with Jessa Calderon. Jessa, welcome to the ICT Newscast.
Thank you for having me.
So your art takes many different forms, poems and rap songs. Tell us how you describe yourself as an artist.
I guess I would just say artist, but my very favorite thing to do is write. So I write hooks for people, verses for people, and I finally gained the confidence to write a book called Sisterhood, which has dropped almost a year from now, or a year ago from now.
And what's Sisterhood about?
Sisterhood is a book about 7 young women who are growing up in the hood, or as some might call in Los Angeles, the barrio. And these young women are all Native and Indigenous women. Some of them are California Native women, and their stories are being followed from the time of birth to the time of death, but the main stories are taking place in their teenage years. And the goal of the book is to have people read it and watch these young women hold sacred, safe space for each other and bring healing to one another through all their trials and tribulations. And so it helps them to grow into these magnificent women who have healthy lives and relationships and careers.
How did you get the inspiration for this book? Was it something you always knew that you wanted to write about?
It was very life-inspired. Every story in that book is based off of a true story, and there are a lot of facts in that book. So it's just basically life from my perspective.
I think so often when we talk about Native women in books or in movies or in songs, it's not every day that you hear about the resilience of Native women. Maybe talk about that, how that played into the storyline of Sisterhood.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I wanted to do because, you know, I grew up in the Los Angeles Unified School District, where they are known to fail us. And when I say us, it's most children, but mainly people who look like me, dark-skinned. And so one situation I speak of often is having a teacher tell me that I was going to be locked up in juvenile hall at 13, pregnant by 14, and dead by 15, because that's just how it goes for us people. For you people is how he said it. And so I drew from that, right? I was very fortunate to be raised in my Native community and be taught how to you know, sit in ceremony and pull from this loving energy. And even though it was a struggle from, you know, the trials and tribulations growing up in the hood and the negativity that surrounds, I always was able to pull from that power. And so I've been very fortunate to do the things that I have done. And what I wanted to do was reach a broader audience in a, I guess, a quicker way to help people understand that we could say, and so it is, when they tell us that this is how it's supposed to go for us, or we could say, actually, I'm writing the narrative for myself. And in that book, I give the tools to help these young people, or anybody who picks up the book to read it, to apply those tools to themselves to create an amazing life and a decent life and a healthy life for themselves moving forward after they read the book.
I noticed your shirt, it says Protect Oak Flat. I'm really curious what your thoughts are on the entire movement. There was just a court hearing that happened in Pasadena. What are your thoughts on Oak Flat?
Yeah, well, that actually is my homeland, is Pasadena. So while they were having that court, I was up here in Arizona. Otherwise, I would have been in support. But I am in support because, you know, there's a lot of power in sacred sites, and we know that. We understand that as Indigenous peoples. And the reason why I stand in support of protecting their sacred site is because if this doesn't go through in a way to protect the lands and the peoples of that area, then we already know that everybody's sacred site is going to be further devastated than some of our sacred sites already have been. So if this site can be protected in this way where on national level we understand and we have seen their site be protected, that gives us all a better chance to keep the rest of our sites that haven't been devastated protect at this point moving forward. So I will fight with them and stand with them because I understand that if I'm acting as if, well, that's not happening in my backyard and only focusing on my situation, then I can expect the same for others. But if we're standing in support with them, then that makes us stronger together, and that gives me the hope that should I call on them to come stand with us, they will do so because they'll remember the time that our people stood with them.
Oak Flat is just one example of various sacred sites around the country that are also under threat of being developed. We also saw the Willow Project in Alaska being a big issue that I've heard, at least from a lot of people talking about. I'm really curious, in your opinion, how do you sort of center Native voices in these grander conversations?
It's really tough. I feel like oftentimes we have to kick that door open. You know, I'm grateful for social media because that has given us a platform to speak our truth. But it's a tough place and a rock, I think, too, because we have sacred sites that we have been trying to protect, and there has been a lot of struggle in it. And some of our family members, our elders, they don't understand social media, and they're asking us not to use it as a platform. So it's really, really tough in getting that voice centered. But for me, it's just about everywhere you go, having a conversation about it so that everybody that you talk to now has that awareness of this situation occurring. And this is actually a really good way to have a conversation if somebody sees your shirt and says, hey, that's really cool. And now you've got a conversation going, right?
Absolutely. Well, Jessa, I've enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
The Vatican officially repudiated the Doctrine of Discovery on Thursday morning. This comes after Indigenous people across the world demanded this action. The Doctrine of Discovery first originated in the late 1400s. It was a justification by the Catholic Church to seize lands that were not inhabited by Christians. That resulted in the colonization and taking of lands over several hundred years throughout different places around the world. We're joined now by Robert Miller, a law professor at Arizona State University, who recently took a deep dive on this topic. Welcome, Professor Miller.
Thank you for having me.
So this news is coming hours before we're sitting down here on Thursday morning. What is your immediate reaction? Why is this important, and what's its significance?
Well, I'm really pleased, and my wife took my blood pressure. My blood pressure is way up. I was supposed to be here to talk about other issues around the Doctrine of Discovery, and this morning the Vatican came out with this statement repudiating the Doctrine of Discovery. For your audience, it is international law, as you say, over 600 years old. It's the law of colonization, and I call it the international law of colonization, because Europeans used this law to colonize Oceania, the New World, and Africa. As late as the 1880s, Europeans were using this international law to carve up Africa for colonies. So this law has impacted every part of the world, as Europeans and then later the United States claimed domination and that God granted them the right to take the lands and human rights of indigenous peoples.
So up until this point, the Catholic Church had never said anything about the Doctrine of Discovery. Is that correct?
As you said, the Church has been asked for 30 or 40 or 50 years, really. Some Native people went to the UN and talked to church leaders in the 70s to repudiate these papal bulls, which is an order from the Church from the 1400s. The Church claimed that they had done away with those bulls in 1539 in a papal bull that said Indians were human beings. Well, that's not the way the European countries of the world took it, and this law developed, and as you said, the United States 200 years ago this year, in the case of Johnson v. McIntosh, Chief Justice John Marshall, in the first American Indian law case in the Supreme Court, adopted the Doctrine of Discovery and applied it to Indian rights here, treaty rights, our lands, our assets. And now I've lost my way where I was headed, but it has been international law since then, and so this is pretty dramatic for the Vatican to just this morning repudiate it.
Is repudiation an apology?
The Pope has apologized many times. The Vatican, I have a couple documents in front of me. In Bolivia in 2015, Pope Francis apologized at great length. He was in Canada just July of last year, and Canadian nations, the Indigenous peoples of Canada, thought he was going to repudiate the doctrine then, and he did not, which was a surprise to everyone. But now, 6-7 months later, he has taken the step that was expected.
We know that the Doctrine of Discovery is the basis of several federal laws in the United States. What does this mean for those laws?
The United States has adopted the doctrine, just as I said, in this Johnson v. McIntosh case that is 200 years old this year. Maybe the Pope waited to this year to repudiate the doctrine for the 200-year anniversary. But what the Church did is an important worldwide educational moment, but it doesn't change the law in any country. It doesn't change titles to land anywhere. And so as Phil Fontaine, who is a former national chief of the Assembly of First Nations in Canada, he's quoted this morning saying, well, thank you, Pope, but now it's up to the nations of the world to address colonization and to change laws that are based on racial discrimination, human genocide, ethnic cleansing, etc. So I've said this for decades. This is a great educational moment, but it's going to take far more than just the Pope repudiating these 600-year-old papal bulls to make real changes for Indigenous peoples.
You actually hosted a gathering recently to talk about the impact of colonization across different Indigenous communities across the world. For those people who you hosted and for yourself, given that you've studied this for many years, how do you even begin to provide the context for how big of a deal this is?
On March the 10th, we had a 7-hour Zoom conference with 13 speakers from South Africa, Norway, Australia, New Zealand. I know I'm blanking on some people, Canada and the US, of course. So we addressed how this international law of colonialism had been applied to our Indigenous peoples across the world. This is a big deal. I do not want to underplay what the Vatican has done, but I don't want to overstate it either. As I already said, it has not changed a policy or a law in any country. How will the national governments of the world react to this? Will it have a real impact? So that's what I and my co-speakers at our conference, and that's available online if people want to spend 7 hours looking at the Doctrine of Discovery. But this is a big step and shouldn't be downplayed.
As journalists, we're always thinking about what's coming next in the news cycle. What do you think is next? Now that this effort has been made, what do you think is next, and what do you think we can expect?
Indigenous peoples have to lobby for legislation, to see laws actually change, to see national policies actually change. The United States is the only country in the world that recognizes that Indigenous peoples are nations and that they have sovereignty. That's from our U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, in which Indian nations are equated with foreign nations and with the states. No other country in the world recognizes the sovereignty and existence, national political existence of Indigenous peoples. That's the next big step, getting other nations to recognize that status, and also for the United States to do even more than it has done in working with tribes as nations.
Well, Professor Miller, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.